And this is the last topic in Chapter 2. In this topic, we are going to talk about associative entities. So, what is an associative entity? It is an entity. Of course, entities that have attributes. Relationships link entities together. And then we have instances where we have two entities in a binary relationship, right? So we've got two entities, one relationship line, and it's a many-to-many, right? So again, we have an instance of employees and skills that we addressed in a previous video. So we've got employees and we've got skills. We know that an employee can have many skills, and any particular skill can be associated with many employees. Therefore, we have a many-to-many. We cannot support many-to-many relationships in a database management system. So in order to get rid of that, we need to create an associative entity. So all the relationships are many-to-many. The associative entity can have meaning independent of the other entities, which means the associative entity can have attributes in and of itself. The associative entity has a unique identifier and can have other attributes. The associative entity may participate in other relationships other than the entities and the associated relationship. And this can also be a ternary relationship should be converted to associative entities. And so that means one of the three entities associated with that relationship should be converted into an associative entity somehow, some way. I like to look at associative entities as a zipper, for instance. So if you physically look at a zipper, there are teeth, and as you pull the zipper up, the teeth are interconnected, one-to-one, right? So think of an associative entity like the actual zipper mechanism. So it's pulling identifiers, the unique keys, from two different entities, bringing it into one entity to relate one entity instance to another entity instance. And in that case, it could be an employee to a skill, and then the same employee to a different skill, right? Or a skill to an employee, and then that same skill to a different employee. That is the general idea. So here we've got a binary relationship, and the binary relationship is completes, is named completes. So we've got employees completes courses, and courses are completed by employees. The completes relationship has an attribute called date completed, and as you can see, the relationship between employee and course is many, and course to employee is many, so we have a many-to-many relationship. So what we do is, instead of saying that the employee completes the course, we say that there are certificates that are being produced showing that an employee has taken a course. Okay? And of course, now we have an attribute called date completed. And in this case, we can give this associative entity its own primary key, which is certificate number. So now there is not a many-to-many scenario. There is a mandatory one-to-many relationship between employee and certificate, and a mandatory one-to-many between course and certificate. Think about the logic of it. You could not have a certificate that is only associated with a course. And conversely, you could not have a certificate that's only associated with an employee. The certificate has to be associated with both an employee and a course. And that's why in a previous video I said that all associative entities are by definition weak, because you cannot have an instance in an associative entity that is not associated with both of the defining or strong entities. So moving along, an associative entity can be unary, right? So an item can have a BOM structure. So an item is used in assemblies, and those assemblies can have components. This could just be a relationship with attributes, right? It's a judgment call, but preferably most designers change these into entities. And finally, we have a ternary relationship, which would be supply schedule, and we've seen this again in a previous video. But instead of supply schedule being a ternary relationship, now we've got an associative entity that is joining 3 different strong entities. Again, this supply schedule is a weak entity. It's an associative entity. It's both. So vendor to supply schedule. So each vendor can supply many parts to any number of warehouses, but need not supply any parts. Okay, so see how that's optional, right? And then each part can be supplied by any number of vendors to more than one warehouse, but each part must be supplied by at least one vendor to a warehouse, right? So you can see how we've got mandatory and optional associated with this as well. And then the very last thing in the chapter is this data model for the Pine Valley furniture. This was developed in Microsoft Visio, so it uses a different notation than you're used to in the ER Assistant. I'll let you look at this anytime you want. If you have questions about this or anything else, again, please remember to send me an email. End of chapter 2.